Hello and welcome to today's show. It is the Healthy Business Podcast, and I am joined today by the wonderful Louise Humphrey. Now, Louise is a qualified Pilates teacher, personal trainer. She's also passionate about running, and she's taught Pilates for over 20 years and really passionate about keeping runners moving and injury-free so they can keep running into their 70s and 80s. She also runs Canicross business, which I know will be something we'll be chatting about. She has her own podcast as well. And she, with the Canicross, has her own dog, which is obviously what it's all about, a little dog called Pickle. So I am excited today because we're going to be taking a slightly different spin on things. We're going to be looking at the importance of Pilates, but actually, we're also been talking about Louise's business and how she's had to shift things because of what's happened in the world and lockdown and what that's meant for not just her clients, but also how she runs her business. So Louise, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the welcome.
Oh, I'm excited for today. I think we're going to have a really interesting chat, and I think it's going to be, well, there's lots of different areas that we're going to cover, I think. So I think it's going to be quite an interesting lesson.
Yeah, I spread myself quite wide, so
but totally relevant, and actually they cross over in so many different ways, I think. So there's lots of different angles that we're going to explore. But before we do, one thing that I always get my guests to talk about is what a healthy business means to them. So I'd love your take on this.
It's a really interesting question, and I mean, I've listened to your podcast before, so I sort of, people answer this very differently. For me, it means two things. A healthy business means that I'm healthy, and so that I can give, for what I do, I'm a Pilates teacher, so that I can give myself to my clients and sort of do what I preach to other people, kind of thing. So it's that point. But it's also about me and taking time for me and not overloading and not overwhelming myself, which I think as business owners, self-employed business owners, that we sometimes overlook. And I've been there, and I'm sure we've all been there in different things. If you've got children, I think that adds to the mix a little bit more. And I just think, for me, I think it's your business is your baby to a certain extent. It's another baby, isn't it? And you feel very protective and very, proud or whatever about it. But so you want to constantly make it better and get it out there. And I think that sometimes you have to take that step back and take some time out for you. So for me, that's what I'm learning. And, I've been doing this online business for about 5 years. So that's what I've noticed, because it's not just about teaching now for me. You've got to do all the other side of it, the marketing, social media, everything, which is not my forte.
And it feels quite overwhelming, right? Like, that's not the reason that we set up a business initially, was to wear all of these other hats. We've set up a business because we want to be able to, help the people that we're here to do. And, I'm a marketeer and a business person, and that's my background anyway. But I didn't go into it because I wanted to have all of those hats.
No, exactly. And actually, another thing, as you go through it and you learn different things about a business and trying to get your own business out there. I'm not a business person, I'm a Pilates teacher. So I'm having to learn all these new things that some I like, some I find really interesting, but some I'm like, I really don't want to do that, and keep putting off. And then you have to do it. So it's finding that balance and that routine that works for you. And I think everyone is really individual with it. And so the healthy business is all about you and how it works for you and your family, for me.
Yeah. Oh, speaks to my language. That's exactly what I employ anyway. So I think there's so much in that. And I think, obviously from your background, working within that kind of health arena anyway, that I would expect that to be something kind of, being really important to you. But how do you, based on all of those things that we were just talking about, the wearing all those different hats, learning those different things, how do you, that's overwhelming, but how do you find that time to still be healthy for you as well?
I think there was a time when I didn't. And I think that because I felt that I needed to sit at my desk, for that amount of time and do that work. And it was getting your head, because I used to work in corporate. I used to work for Hilton, the Living Well, health clubs. They were health clubs. I was probably at my most unhealthiest when I did that, because I was just traveling. and telling people about fitness, not doing it myself.
Yeah.
But I think you have that mindset, especially if you come out of corporate, that you work 9 to 5 and you do this thing. So I even though I teach, I never thought of that as work. So I teach for in the evening or in the morning or whatever, and then I'd sit down and do my work. So I didn't separate it, and I didn't take that time out for me. I found that really hard. And actually, over the last probably, the pandemic had quite a lot to do with that, to get me back doing the thing I love. And me realizing, even though I tell people this all the time, that actually if you take a little bit of time out, do some exercise, you feel great and you're more creative. But as you know, we don't do that for ourselves, and it's really hard to do.
It's really hard to do, and I completely resonate with that. When I first started in my first business, I felt those hours, I felt like I had to be present 9 till 5. But actually it's not, is it? It's running a business, as you say, in a way that works for you, and that can be all sorts of different times, and what works for somebody isn't necessarily going to work for you. So having that awareness, knowing what that looks like, plus, as you say, looking after you is part of running your business.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be doing the Pilates during the day. It's okay to be, doing your exercise during that. Is part of work, because it's part of looking after you as that business owner.
And I've got quite a few clients now that are self-employed, and now they're taking that time out. So I do a 10 o'clock Pilates class for half an hour online, and they're putting that in their diaries, and they come. Whether they've got changed or not, it's another matter into exercise kit, but we deal with that. But, they come and they do the class, and that is now their routine. And I think the hardest thing, even though I love exercising and would do, the weekends would be the time when I would do it, I know I have to schedule in, even now, the times when I'm going to do my exercise.
Yeah.
Now it's different every day. So yeah, I do it.
Yeah, definitely. And one of your big things is your sort of 10 minutes Pilates. And so actually you can find time, you can find even just 10 minutes to be able to, look after your body, because it needs it.
Yeah, and that was born before the pandemic, before online really happened. I was very aware that I teach face-to-face classes as well, but I was very aware my clients, because I had a young child, I was taking the holidays off to be with them. So I was being, and actually now we started talking about that, I was doing self-care for me, because I take the holidays off, to be with him. I was aware of that. But what I found was they weren't doing any practice, and I would give them sheets of paper, but that wasn't working, And so I started doing videos, and I sort of, from there, that's where the built up the online. But what I was noticing was they didn't want to spend an hour doing sessions. And I kind of got that, because I don't like doing an hour's worth of exercise. It's not how I work. So I was doing these 10 minutes and sort of building them up. So you did them 3 or 4 times a week or every day. And people love them because they can just fit them into your day. You can do it first thing, you can do it last thing before you go to bed. And yeah, people are busy. People are really busy, and I get that, but I also get how important exercise is for people. So yes, that's where that was born from. So it's sort of grown, along that, and especially going into the pandemic, it became something different.
And what I love most about that is that it's your passion, and it's the way that you keep yourself fit and healthy, but actually you looked at what your audience needed and provided something for them. And that's really been that kind of mainstay through your business, of going, well, what do they need? And when you put your ideal client at the heart of your business, then you're going to be able to put those products and services that fit them, but also work and fit you as well.
Yeah. And actually, when I started out, and I look back now, I was like, there wasn't many people doing that. Now everyone does it. It's all sort of become the norm, hasn't it? And it's like, okay, I was there first.
Yeah, the original.
So yeah, no, it is quite interesting. And I think people's attitude about exercise, and I think people, especially if you're working from home, because more people, even they're still working corporate or whatever, are working from home. And so I think people are becoming more aware of what they can fit into their day without it sort of, detriment to their work. So yeah, I think the pandemic did us a lot of good in a lot of ways, and people were started to become aware of their self-care and how they did things.
Because it is boundaries, isn't it? It's part of those boundaries. It's part of that awareness. It's part of taking responsibility for a certain extent, I think, of just when you're at home through the lockdown, we couldn't go out and do things, but we had our computers. So what could we do to utilize that meant that we weren't on, constant Zoom meetings, or we needed those break from different things, and just being able to utilize the tools that we did have, but do things in a slightly different way.
Yeah, and I think what's different about doing, say, Pilates online is, yes, and I was aware of the Zoom fatigue, especially because we sort of all had it, didn't we, really? But the thing with Pilates, and what I was finding with my clients, that they lie on their mat on the floor, they put their laptop on the floor, and they actually didn't have to look at me, or they didn't have to look at me all the time. They could start off when I demonstrated, and then they would go into their own stuff. So it was like being in a hall. And in fact, I saw better results online, and I still, there's pros and cons of everything, but I still prefer it because people are in their own environment. And if they set themselves up in a space where they can not be disturbed or whatever, they actually concentrate so much more than wondering what, Mary's doing next to them or whatever, or suddenly having a chat or whatever. And the results I've been getting from that are way better than I ever got in the village hall.
That's amazing. So amazing. And I think again, it's kind of looking at that business model, looking at what works, looking at what doesn't work, carrying on with the stuff that is working and tweaking the other bits. Because essentially, you were doing, I know you were doing some online stuff as well, but you were holding a lot of classes in person, and that just had to be closed, right? So how did you, that's a big mindset thing as well. So how did you navigate through, like, what steps did you take of kind of tweaking, changing the business that allowed you to still serve?
I think I was really lucky because I had that online presence and my membership, which was all recorded videos. I had all the technology. I had the camera on I can't even think what it's called now. The little camera for the webcam. So I had all that set up because I know they sold out of those, and you can get those after a while on my tripod. So I had it all set up. And I just literally, because it all happened so quickly, didn't it? If we go back to March 20, it was overnight. And I kind of knew that things were changing, and I thought, I'm not happy, because I've got a lot of older clients. I'm not happy going into the hall in an area where there's a load of us. Potentially we don't know what it's all about. So I literally sent an email out the night before, and then the next day we carried on our routine, our classes online straight away. And I was so proud of, because I've got I had a 90, I think she was 96 at the time, year old, doing Pilates, and she'd been doing it with me, and she came online. I did a little video of how to get on Zoom and things like that, and sent it out to them. And I did all that overnight. And so we didn't have a stop in what we were doing.
I love it.
Yeah.
And that's why you're still where you are, and still growing and still scaling and doing different things. And
I hope so.
I know you are, because we've been working together on a few of those different new programs that you've got kind of working through. And one of we're talking about 96-year-old lady, but one of your other sort of passions is working with runners specifically. We saw a huge surge of running with lockdown. It was one of the only exercises we could do from home. I think there's, with that, if you've not run before, then, injuries can come left, right, and center as well. And, I've had my fair share of injuries from various sports and things too, but there is a mindset in that as well. And I'd love to explore the kind of the injury and mindset side of things, and actually how people, with that kind of taking of responsibility, how people just think, okay, well, I'll rest and that's going to be enough. Like, I've seen that. We're recording this sort of around Great North Run and marathon time, and I'm seeing a lot of people, even my friends, that are posting going, I had this injury back then, and I've thought, a month's rest would be okay. And I'm like, no, you need to strengthen this. And that's the same as mindset, isn't it? Like, if something's not working, or something's happened, a curveball's happened, we need to navigate ways to kind of strengthen us back to where we need to be.
Yeah. And I think for me, I've always run, and sort of on and off, and I got an injury during lockdown. So I wasn't running during lockdown, I was strengthening. And I was really frustrated with all those people out running, because it was like, I do this too. But so, yes, so it is. And I think it's about knowledge, because I get as frustrated when I see on Twitter or whatever, I'm just going to rest this is that, or what should I do? And people, I get that, especially at the moment, people are always out to get the easiest and the cheapest way of finding a cure or whatever, but you need the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically work with over 40s because I'm over 40, but also our bodies are changing so much, and we need to change. Even if we've got injuries or not, we need to change the way that we do things. And we can't just get out and run. Our bodies aren't designed to do that anymore because things are changing so much, whether that's hormones, that's age, the body's deteriorating. So I think there's more knowledge out there now, but there's still not enough. And I think it's just an educational thing, which I suppose is what I'm trying to do, to educate people that actually, resting might be the right thing to do in some cases, but invariably you need to get stronger because your body can't take the load of what you're doing. And, Pilates is a great way if you don't want to get into a gym and lift weights. You ultimately probably will because you'll get into what it's doing to your body. But yeah, and Pilates is a great way to get movement, strength, flexibility and mobility. And so I feel for me, it's just about getting out there and educating people and just trying to get people to take ownership of what's happening with their bodies. I think that's,
There's so many synchronicities between that and business. So many of kind of having that awareness, taking action, getting stronger, and then getting the results. And I think that's, it's what it comes down to. And that's what, part of where I come from is that kind of healthy, wealthy business kind of thing, because they're so intrinsic. We are so intrinsic to our businesses. So I want to kind of go into this mindset piece a little bit further, because I think it's so interesting when injuries happen. And I've had my fair share, as I said, and you can either kind of have this, I'm just going to sit on the sofa and wait for things to pass, and that whole rest mentality, or there's okay, what can I do about it, and taking action. Where do people start? So if someone has had an injury, and I know you're big on this kind of education piece as well, where do people start? Like if they're just in that, oh, gosh, I've been injured again, or I've got another niggle, like how do they move forward from that?
I think the most important thing is if it's been a niggle or an injury that keeps reoccurring, you need to go and seek, professional advice first. I mean, I think that's, and people don't want to do that either. And it is all about mindset. It's about running. For some people, it's either a physical thing or a mental thing. And if it's both of those things, you don't want to stop doing it because you know how it makes you feel. What I find, and I don't know the answer to this because I don't, what I find really hard is that people could do a lot of prevention before they get injured, of the strengthening, but they don't feel like they have time or want to. I don't think it will give the same, feelings or euphoria as a run do. People tend to, when they've got injured, they tend to realise, and then they start doing things. And I don't know how to change that mindset. If it's a niggle and it doesn't happen all the time, then you sort of think, oh, I'm fine, I'll just slow down, or I'll do this or whatever, because they don't want to do something else.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not explaining that very well, but I don't know what the change, where the change happens. I think it happens when they get injured and they know that if they want to carry on doing what they're doing, they have to do something.
Yeah. I see this so often as well, with people are pushing so hard to get those results, whether it's, a PB with running or it's business results. And it's like, actually, if you can prepare yourself so that you're at your optimal levels, then you're going to get those results faster and quicker, and you're going to be stronger doing that without having to be forced to stop. What I really was thinking then, as you were talking about that kind of preparation thing, it's boring, isn't it? Like, let's be really honest. It's boring doing that stuff. And we recently redecorated our house, and it's just made me think of that, of like all the prepping and the stripping of stuff and the washing the walls. That's the really boring stuff.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that, then when you do put the paint on, it looks awful.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like that, I think. I don't know what made me think of that, but it's just
I'm with you on that.
We have to go through sometimes the stuff that we don't really want to do, or that feels kind of, the frustrating, the kind of slow work. You can't see the results immediately, but actually that is what's going to give you the results.
Yeah, and I think it's the same in business as well, isn't it? If you prepare and which I'm obviously not very good at, prepare sort of in advance, or what
I think you're brilliant at it. The fact that you'd already had the foresight to be online already.
Probably, but I think it's the same sort of thing, and it's like, there's lots of running programs. Like, if you know your goal, I mean, it's all about goal setting. Whether you do that in business, you do that in exercise, whether that's just a Pilates thing, just solely Pilates, or you've got a race to go for. So as you said earlier, the Great North Runs happen, the London Marathon's in a couple of weeks' time, and people will follow a plan. And I know we talked about this because I was doing some research on sort of the running plans. I'm not a running coach, but I looked at the London Marathon, running plans that people were able to have for free. Brilliant. But nowhere in there was anything about strength. And I was like, well, I don't get that, because if you're going to do all this training, and yeah, they do it, they load up slowly and build it up slowly, which is what you do in a business, is what you do when you're running. But there's nothing about strength and the sort of the support that you need. It's the support in your body as you go through this. And, we all get a bit excited when we can run longer distance and carry on doing it. And your body can't cope with it if it's not prepared for it. So, yeah, there's so many analogies to business running, isn't there? And
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your injury, and because I know you were sort of planning for an event, and I want to delve into the canicross side of things as well, because I know we have a lot of dog lovers that listen to this show as well. And I think I'd never heard about it because I don't have a dog, but I'd never heard about it until I started working with you. And I'm like, this is brilliant. This is so interesting.
It's the best thing ever. And as you said, I love Pilates. Obviously, I've been teaching that for so long, but I feel like I've got this sort of goal now, because I do my Pilates so that I can do my running, so I can run with my dog. Canicross is when you run with your dog attached to you. So, and you have to have the proper kit. It's not just, you can get lots of cheap invitations out there, but you need the proper kit. So come and have a look at Pause for Running and you can find out about it. But it's a faster way of running. We probably don't do the distances. And there's a lot more that can happen to your body. And I got injured. Well, one was an old ski injury, so that was that. But one, I tripped over the dog, and I wasn't even running. So these things happen. I twisted my knee, and it was pretty bad, actually. But I had physio, and I work really closely with my physio. I'm lucky to do that. But I made myself a goal for sort of 6 months down the line about what I wanted to achieve, because I knew, especially because it was during lockdown as well, and I couldn't get out. I knew that I needed to do this because I was determined to get back running again. And so I sort of kept that goal, and I read loads of it as well. I read about ultra running. I read all sorts of things. I just wanted this inspiration to help me keep doing what I knew was, and at the beginning, you can't do much, and you've got to just build that up again. And it's now part of what I do. So, it's stayed there. And if I don't do it, I know I feel the weaknesses. And again, if you don't prepare for support, you don't get to where you want to get to. I'm saying this to remind myself about this as well in my business, you understand?
I love that. I think it all comes back to that, though, isn't it? It seems really consistent of whatever you're doing. It's having that awareness, setting those goals, and then building that plan for the in-between piece, but making sure that you're as strong as possible to be able to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
But that seems to be this kind of common thread of, as we've been talking business as well as running and Pilates and coming out of lockdown, that seems to be that kind of golden thread of just actually taking action, having a bit of responsibility for that as well.
And I think it's, you saying taking action is great. I was just about to say, taking yourself out of your comfort zone, because you can run along, or, in your business, you can go along quite easily and not achieve much. And sometimes you need to take yourself out of that comfort zone. And whether strength training is something you're really scared about doing, there's ways of doing it. You don't have to lift weights. As I said earlier, it can be body weight, it can be Pilates. Pilates is, you'll find that most of the top athletes will be doing it. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and this guy was on, it was about injury prevention. And he was saying, you never see the top athletes, Mo Farah, some of the other top marathon runners, you never see them injured.
Yeah.
Because strength training is part of their training.
Yeah.
They do it as part of it. And yes, they've got a lot more time and that's what they're doing. But actually, if you want to run and you love your running, then I don't understand why you wouldn't put other factors in place to help you do it.
It's part of achieving that goal, isn't it? Of understanding all the extra pieces that can make a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you're right. The elite athletes, they have that is their job. That is what they spend their time on doing. But it's part of them achieving that goal, and they don't run every day. They don't do their sport, whatever sport it is. And I think that's a really, really interesting take. I mean, my brother is he's an ex-England rugby player. But he's the most capped player in the whole world and is in the Guinness World Records for that. That's something I haven't shared on here before. But part of that is because he didn't get injured. As part of his training, he had a lot of strength exercises that he had to do, and he's a big guy. And playing rugby as well, yes, he was quite lucky in the sense that he didn't have kind of the physical injury and the impact side of things, but a lot of that, I think, came from the fact that he spent so much time doing the strength training and really working on that as part of his practice. But I think, we can learn a lot from elite athletes, even if we're not elite athletes, because it's not just about the results that you're pushing so hard to get. You need all those other pieces in place to be able to do that. And as you say, strength is a big piece of that. I love the fact that you talked there around the fear that comes with strength training, that actually it's just body weight. It can just be body weight. Like Pilates is body weight for a lot of people.
And I think as you get older as well, I think we just we go into that sort of mindset of, oh, well, I'm getting old. And I don't want to get old. It's inevitable.
We are getting older anyway.
We are getting every old, day. I want to be the best I can be at my age. And, and I want to keep moving. I get stiff, I get, aches and pains, but it's not going to stop me. But I know it's not going to stop me because I'm strong enough to carry on doing what I'm doing. It's interesting, something you said earlier, it's like we should take examples from elite athletes. We take examples from business owners that we've seen, and we sort of follow, and we sort of think, oh, I could do something like that, or I could do that, and their ways of working or whatever. So why don't we do it for our own sort of self-care?
Yeah, exactly. I think for such a long time, I think lockdown has shifted this slightly, but I think for such a long time, the sort of version of health has been just, eating kind of 5 fruit and veg, making sure that you're doing 30 minutes of exercise. But actually, it's so much more than that. And it doesn't have to be that one big hour or that 30 minutes in one go. As you say, your 10 minutes Pilates, you can break that up into lots of different sort of fragments throughout the day. And it's those choices that come back to it as well.
And it's like, we're sitting here for however long. We need to get up and move as well, but you don't need to change. You don't need to. I think also people think that exercise is getting hot and sweaty all the time. It can be. You need to challenge your body, but we need to move throughout our day to keep ourselves so that we can do all the other stuff that we're doing. So, just getting up and moving and finding ways into your day that you can bring that movement, being on the telephone, cool, just wandering around rather than sitting at your desk.
Yeah.
And that helps with your headspace and everything else to when you sit down, you're like more engaged with what you're doing. I can get involved in something and stay seated for too long, and then I'm thinking, oh, can't do this anymore. And off I have to go and do something else.
I know. You'll quite often find me whilst I'm waiting for the kettle to boil to be doing like some squats or some lunges or something. I mean, people looking into my kitchen will probably think I'm crazy, but it's just it's that break away from my desk. It's the break away from things. I'm making a cup of tea, but rather than just standing scrolling on my phone, I'm kind of just, getting.
Well, I used to do that with my son when he was a baby. I used to hold him in my arms and do squats and lunges. Yes. So he was my weight.
He was your weight. Oh, I love it. It's so interesting, isn't it? I think also one of the things you mentioned is that as we get older, our bodies change. And I think that's also really important. It's that check-in again. It's that awareness piece of, it's not an excuse to not do it just because we're getting older. It's an excuse to have that reawareness and kind of going, okay, well, what do I need? And, sort of navigating through that. And it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
I used to do a load more exercise when I was in my teenage years and in my early 20s than I'm able to do now. And that's partly a time thing, but also the exercise that I want to do is now different.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, it doesn't have to be what you've always done.
No, and I also get our bodies are changing, and it's kind of important to do even more now, whereas we just want to be more sedentary probably. Yeah. But the other thing is, I'm in my sort of mid late 50s, and I'm loving doing a business. I'm reinventing my business, I suppose, the last thing. So it's, to me, it's a new business. It's like, I'm quite happy to do that. So why aren't I happy to do the exercise as well? And so, we're all different, but going for a walk is better than, anything. So, and we can all, hopefully, most of us can all walk. So it's just getting out there and doing something and spending that time on us.
That leads me into kind of asking as to kind of, what are your tips for people who are thinking and listening to this going, maybe I should be adding a bit more strength into my day, or maybe adding a little bit more movement into today, and that might help me from a business perspective as well. What are your top tips for people to start?
Well, I think you actually just did one of them. It's like when you're waiting for the kettle to boil, put the phone down, do some squats and lunges, and even if you need to hold on to the surface, your working surface, you can do that, and that's going to help your leg strength. So just doing things like that. But also, if you are on a phone call, have walking meetings. These are very basic things, for working. But also setting a time. I think my biggest thing, and I get a lot of my clients to do, is diarising it, putting it in your diary. And I know you start work at a later time. And you get your exercise done before, and I think that's brilliant. I don't, because I teach first thing, so I tend to do my exercise later in the day. And actually, for me, that works quite well because I break my day up. So it's what works for you, but it's fitting it in. And if you're not sure that it's going to work, or you don't think, oh, that's not going to work for me, try it. And even if it's just like learning Pilates, or just try 10 minutes and see how you feel. Keep with it, because it's like anything new, isn't it? It's like you give up before you get into it. But yeah, just make that commitment or that goal to yourself, even if it's as simple, I'm going to do 10 minutes Pilates each day for this week. That's perfect.
That's a perfect segue into how can people find you if they want to do 10 minutes Pilates?
So it's studio44pilates.com, and there's lots of, and it's aimed at runners. But Pilates is Pilates. So, there's a lot of different, within my membership, there's obviously live classes, but there's also there's over 200 videos, I think, 10-minute videos. And they're for all abilities. There's beginners, there's if you're advanced, or if you just fancy a slow stretch, there's everything in there. I've even got desk to stretch stuff as well. So stuff you can do in the middle of the day. So there's no excuse. And yeah, I'm on all the socials as Studio 44 Pilates. And if you are interested in the Canicross side of it, it's Pause for Running.
And you've got a podcast on that as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so we've got a podcast called Canicross Conversations, which is brilliant. If you're into dogs, it's good anyway, because you talk to sort of all sorts of experts about dogs, about us as runners. So yeah, I love it. I love my podcast.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the listeners, if you are into dogs, or if you're into running, or a mix of both, then go check out Louise's podcast, because it's a brilliant one. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've loved having our conversation of just a mix and actually talking through those synchronicities between looking after ourselves, looking after our businesses, and how the two are so intrinsic as well. I think it's a really important conversation to have.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
You are so welcome. So thank you for listening to today's episode, and I will see you for the next one next week. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.